Hello everyone, Revan619 here, and in today's video I wanted to rank the companions to see how they have changed in DLC 3 and to discuss where I feel like their current builds are and how overall viable or overpowered they might be, or if they're just in a good right spot. Yes, I know that on Unfair, because of the way that the game is currently balanced with really OP late game items as well as just buff stacking, even Unfair is incredibly easy and trivial to beat. However, there are still the opportunity for the devs to, in DLC 4, to add a sort of brutal mode, which would be like their version of Baldur's Gate 3 Honor mode, where they could potentially add some limits to stop the game being so overpowered and breaking. Now, I personally think having a separate game mode for this that would have another challenge, or even like Honor mode, where it has entirely new mechanics, would be the best way to do it, so people that like to have an easy ride and just be there for the story can enjoy their version of the game, and the people that actually really want a sweaty challenge where, being a CRPG, they actually get a challenge from playing their role-playing game rather than just a visual novel, then they can have that mode with all the little extra mechanics and rewards that come along with that. With that in mind, let's talk about where we think everyone is once we've talked about how things have changed and what we get from the augments. First up is Abelard. So Abelard is the first companion that you meet in the game. He is a Navy officer warrior who has the opportunities to be built into 7 secondary tier 2s, including Arc Militant, Assassin, Executioner, and the Reddit fan favorite of Vanguard. Of all these ones, it is without a doubt to say that his top build with fleet combat training is most likely Arc Militant. Whilst you can make an exceptionally powerful Executioner, you're going to be very reliant on Rock Swords, and Rock Swords might actually be his top 1 build when it comes to Executioner, but it isn't his top fun build, and it doesn't have the mobility. It is incredibly item reliant to actually get the most out of it, needing not just Rock Swords, Malpian Shroud, Invigorating Resolve, but also the Inertia Boots. Arc Militant can beat the game just as easy without the item reliance, which is kind of why I like that more on Abelard, and because Abelard doesn't have infinite attacks like a Psyker does, then having different options for him I actually find to be a lot more useful. Whilst Assassin is also pretty good, and like I said, the slash build in general, it does require him to have much higher agility, and his agility is pretty limited by his base build, and he is designed to go into heavy armor, so going for a charge base build is normally the best way to do it, and you can create some really good charge loops with the Epiphany Sword in Act 2. You could give him an offhand shotgun pistol, which will scale from stuff like crowd kill and easy target, which, whilst the damage doesn't completely drop off a cliff in Act 4, is still perfectly usable and has that iconic 40k experience. There is currently a bug with shields and kick where with any buff scaling or temporary HP scaling from Malpian Shroud, the damage is too high and it actually outdamages the base damage of any weapon in the game, so you can be doing thousands upon thousands of damage by using kick and shield bash. So with all that in mind and all the new fun little gimmicks added in augments, whilst he doesn't have any augments that specifically break the game, adding on the eye lasers that you can get to him, he has a lot of fun with that, so he can make multiple attacks with it. So if I was to put Abelard anywhere, it would be straight into the viable section. He doesn't break the game, but he does have a bug that is game breaking, which is not the same thing. But he is definitely perfectly viable, and he is just a solid all-round member. Because of how tanky he is and how tanky he can be built, he can be very useful. Though stuff like Hardened Scars and Clenched Teeth is often bugged and not working since the 1.6 patch dropped. So there are things that Alcat do need to work on when it comes to Abelard. Next up we have Idira. Idira did gain a new augment that as she levels it reduces her chance to proc her Perils of the Warp. However, unlike a Sanctioned Psyker, Idira always has a chance to proc Perils of the Warp. The way it works for a Sanctioned Psyker is once you have used enough powers to get to 15 Veil Degradation, minor powers count for 1 Veil Degradation, major powers count for 3, and there are other ways to increase it, but basically, if you're using major powers, you'll be able to do it 5 times with a major power before you'll even be able to begin to trigger Perils of the Warp. And once you get there, as long as you don't click a major power, a Sanctioned Psyker can never trigger Perils of the Warp. This makes them incredibly safe to use, and they are incredibly overpowered. Idira, however, can just explode and die on any power click, and yeah, no, it just makes her not want to be used on higher difficulties. While she is absolutely fine, can be built as a pure assassin, can be built with the Cyber Raven, she's just not interesting. Operative did get buffs, which is making her a lot stronger in this patch than she has been in previous patches, but it's just better to make a mercenary than use her. It's not worth taking into a party, especially if you're playing on Unfair or Grim Dark. She adds the only way that you can possibly lose the game. A lot of people argue that, oh, but it's gambling and gambling is fun. And that's a flat out lie. Not that gambling isn't fun. I'm going to have absolutely no opinion on that because this is YouTube. It's a lie that she is gambling. She's actually just Russian roulette. Idira scales psi power slower than a regular psyker. She doesn't really see any benefit over the course of a normal battle from her warp conductor gloves, and because she gains psi rating lower and has a higher chance of exploding, basically you get one of two things that will happen. You'll either have a weaker psyker power than a rogue trader, mercenary, or Heinrix psyker, or she just dies. Terrible. Next up is Argenta. Argenta didn't really get any augments that drastically enhance her playstyle, though she can use the Cerebral Inverter MK Tactician for an arc rifle build. What she does highly benefit is her normal build from before 1.6 with the Hand of Righteousness to entirely cripple any boss in the game, as it minuses 3 stats from every shot that she does. So if she's doing a burst fire build, she's incredibly powerful. As I showed with my build video, by Act 4 she can do 360k bursts even without extensive buff stacking. Argenta still breaks the game, still exceptionally powerful, and probably going to be one of your easiest damage dealers to use consistently throughout the entire game. Next up is Cassia. Cassia can't use augments, didn't really see any changes, but she's still exceptionally overpowered. With her Navigator unique stuff stacked on top of Grand Strategist, stacked on top of Officer, she is one of the best buffers that you can ever get. Whilst her damage is non-existent, and people that say she's a nuker only play on lower difficulties, because if you compare to what she's doing endgame, doing barely 150 of power, which can stack over time, to say Argenta, who can just immediately do a 20k burst with no buffs and no ramp up, yeah, they are not the same. However, as a Grand Strategist, she can essentially always guarantee a turn 1 finest hour, especially with Point of Curiosity to stack up enemies, which she can then even double Lidless Stare herself with the Sororitas boots to turn 1 finest hour from level 17. Yes, you're going to need stims to do that effectively early game, but the fact that she can do that and can enable your damage dealers to 1 turn means that the fact that she skips initiative just makes her overpowered, and with all of her Navigator ability stacking buffs, what more could you want? Absolutely fantastic. Next up, we have Pascal. Pascal received a lot of buffs this patch. His operative buff got the scaling that I'd been suggesting to Alcat, which is very nice, and he also receives exploits and extra turns, which I've been complaining about for almost 2 years to Alcat. So the fact they've done that has made Pascal exceptionally strong. Now, what has made him even more powerful is just how ridiculous Overcharge Protocols is. Overcharge Protocols will enable you to get 10% damage, or sometimes more, as it's based on his intelligence scaling. It allows him to increase damage for every shot he takes, every reload he makes, and every kill he gets. So if you fired a shot with an area attack and kill 3 enemies and then reload, that's going to be 10 or whatever the percentage is for the shot, for the 3 kills, and for the reload. So that's going to be 5 stacks that come in, and because it stacks and goes on throughout the battle, as battles go on, he becomes an absolute locomotive. Once you add on top of that he can use Bounty Hunter talents to exceedingly increase his damage and his armor damage, and the fact that it can even stack with the Ragefire Plasma Gun, then yes, Pascal is definitely going up there in breaking the game. If you looked at the video that I did for him recently, he does 91k single damage shots. Exceptionally powerful. Next up is Heinrix. Heinrix is basically a straight upgrade to Abelard, because he's Abelard but a psyker. Now, early game he might feel like he is weaker because he doesn't have access to fleet combat training, nor does he come with heavy armor. So the way the average person builds him, they might just see him as a squishy Abelard. But if you know the talents to take and you know how to build him, he is the highest damaging companion in the game, and he has infinite damage stack scaling with, say, Rock Swords and Executioner. You can build him for Twin Swords with Shearing Strikes very easily, and he can use 4 Pyromancy dots for that. He can use Where It Hurts with his Pyromancy powers to multi-stack that. He can use the Zarkov armor to have multiple stacks of Orchestrate Flame. You could ignore that entirely and still just go into Biomancy and focus on Rock Swords. And like I said, he can infinitely stack damage. In terms of damage dealers, he is the strongest. He can make the entire party unkillable. He can do exceptional damage to the entire party. He has no top end to damage, and when you give him stuff like the Inertia Boots or the Void Veteran Boots, he has unlimited attacks. Yes, we don't want to base this on Act 4, but even without a buffer, with the Spirit Drape he can reduce all costs of his own powers to nothing, and he can make psi rating number of attacks during that first round, meaning he's guaranteed to get that Tettering Breach off of his own hard work, and just buffers make him stronger. He's just exceptionally powerful. Now, Early on, it is easier to straight up do more damage with Argenta because of how strong the priest buff is, but Heinrix will actually get going easier, will clear the map easier, and can eventually beat her damage. So I can understand why some people might argue it's Argenta, and I would not say that they were dumb, and I would even hear out every argument they had to say that she might be better. It is going to be personal preference to what do you determine the best. The highest number that they can do the quickest, or which one is easier to win. Overall, in the long run, Heinrix will take every point from my perspective. Next up is Jay. Jay does get access to the MK Cerebral Inverter, which is for the Master Tactician. So what the Cerebral Inverter Master Tactician does is it allows her, as she builds stacks of tactical advantage, to get infinite scaling onto her intelligence. By infinite, I mean 1,000. She can get up to 1,000 on a couple of shots from an arc rifle. With this build, she can do exceptional damage. It's not as strong as if she'd be a Voidborn. A Voidborn is much better because it can scale all fellowship from it, but it does make Jay exceptionally powerful. I wouldn't say she's better than Abelard, but in terms of building up stacks to buff, she is exceptionally powerful and can now reliably map clear, which for an officer is absolutely insane. The biggest drawbacks to Jay, though, is she still doesn't have a good base tier 1 build, so for her to be an effective buffer, you need to get decisive response and doing my part. Without those talents, she does struggle early game, but arc rifles does give her really good Act 3 onwards damage, so yes, no, she's incredibly viable now. Next up, we have Urvillet. Urvillet did not receive anything in augments, but she did indirectly buff from the operative rework, so she did get stronger, and Owlcat finally changed some of the dead talents that she had. So Urvillet's base build in the code originally identified 2 talents that were removed from the game, so she just got random talents. Owlcat have now fixed that and given her a base build, so she is quite strong. However, she'd be a lot stronger if she could have access to the Ricochet augment, which she can't. But she's perfectly usable. She's not unviable, and we might see where she ends up in the rankings here, but she is a lot stronger. Next up is Ulfar, and Ulfar has received new armors, he's received new weapons. However, he did not get any benefits from the augments, and he does have a few issues. The main issue for Ulfar is he is a soldier with the stats of a warrior. What some people don't realize, and what is always a derailing part of an argument when it comes to Ulfar, is his high base strength. Because Ulfar has higher base toughness and with peak condition really high strength, some people argue Ulfar's OP. Toughness is a very minimal impacting stat. It does not actually add that much. The same for strength. 900 strength is only a 450% damage modifier. It is virtually nothing. There is an Act 2 item that can give you over 1,000%. So Ulfar, who doesn't have access to that, when it comes to melee, even on items alone, before you consider talents, is weaker. He can't use Rock Swords, he can't use Malpian Shroud, he can't use Arc Militant's Cape. He doesn't have access to Impetus or Ramming Speed, he doesn't have access to Crowd Kill, he doesn't have access to Easy Target. Ulfar as a soldier is also infinitely weaker than Argenta because he doesn't have access to rate of fire gear. He can't use the Temperis Elite Carapace backpack, he can't use the Compensator gloves, he can't use the gloves of Rapid Desolation, he can't even use the tactical backpack. This makes Ulfar the weakest possible that he could be for both a warrior or a soldier just because of gear limitations. The high base stats are meaningless when you actually look at what they do. This is much similar to how people overvalue what stacking versatility does. Even 50 stacks versatility doesn't add that much, as I've proven in many videos, because just look at the percentage of what it's adding. Even an assassin's talent Imminent Demise could add an extra 1,000%. So you understand how little a 450% damage increase is, especially when he has those lack of talents and lack of ways to effectively deal damage with multi-hit because he can't use Rock Swords. Ulfar did, however, with his new gear, get access to an interesting combo. If when you have the access to use Firearm Mastery, if you actually use the Rapid Fire on the Typhoon Bolter, it will change your rate of fire to 20. If you click Firearm Mastery on that, it will actually give you 24 single shot attacks. With his new Icebreaker Sabatons, which also come in the same location in Act 4, that means you'll get 24 free shots, which will reset 24 free kills for kick. With the kick bug, if you've buffed up Ulfar stats, will mean that he can actually map clear very easily. It's just very item and very buff reliant. Overall, he isn't the viable, but he is still weaker than Jay, weaker than Abelard, far weaker than Heinrix or Argenta or even Pascal, but I would say he is stronger than Urvillet, because Urvillet has a lot of AP issues. Yes, she could make a lot of attacks around, but even in Act 2, you're needing 9 AP when you only have access to 5 AP to do half of what you want. Ulfar doesn't have those issues. His base build is solid, it's just he just falls behind the rest of the party by the fact that he's a soldier who can't use the soldier gear, and he has high warrior stats without having access to warrior talents or warrior gear. Next up is Morazai. Morazai didn't really gain anything extra. He is still locked being Assassin, but Assassin did get openings on extra turns, so his base build did overall improve. Morazai actually has access to some uniquely overpowered items like the Undying Rage. The Undying Rage allows every hit that Morazai does to stack armor. He can then also use the Bloodseeker's Clave to turn bleeding enemies to dodge enemies. So by the time you get access to Morazai in Act 3, you can easily build up 900 plus armor and 900 plus dodge. Going into Act 4 with Malign Influence, you can use items like the Hitari Blade of Bloodthirst with the Lelithian's Fury knives to build up with Malign Influence and all your direct damage procs from Assassin to create the Death Aura build, especially with Fiend of Virbo 6. This allows Morazai to just walk around the map, one-shotting everything and very easily clearing it, and this is before he even deals damage, which is exceptionally high of a Shearing Strikes build. Whilst for a long time many people have misunderstood how Morazai works or even plays, he's actually one of the game-breaking companions. Now, I don't think he's as strong as Pascal currently, but he is still really effective. You could even make the argument he is stronger than Pascal, but I think because you have Pascal longer, it's fairer to say that Pascal is stronger. But Morazai is exceptionally powerful. He's actually more powerful than Abelard. He's more powerful than Jay. He's more powerful than Ulfar. He's more powerful than Urvillet. He's more powerful than Idira. Yeah, no, he is shockingly good. And I hate to say it as the Emperor's most dogmatic soldier and Xenos hater. Next up, Urvillet got some really OP items, and he also got some big buffs to his mechanic. However, he is an Act 5 companion. There's not much you can say about it. In terms of viability, he's an Act 5 companion. He's there for Act 5. That's it. Nothing else. Like, meh. Like, if you got him in Act 3, maybe I could say that he's as strong as Ulfar and stronger than Urvillet. But you don't. You get him for Act 5. There's less than an hour left of the game. He's an Act 5 companion. But he is way better. He is fun, but you don't get to use him long enough to be fun for long enough. Moving along, Caligos, Winterscale. Not many people will actually see him as a companion because he goes on a heretic run. He does have some unique mechanics, and he is unfortunately a noble. Noble is the weakest origin in the entire game, but his build is actually pretty solid. Unlike Urvillet, who has a really bad base build. Yeah, Winterscales isn't too bad, but he's just an endgame warrior that you get in Act 5 with nothing unique going on for him. Not bad. Like, he's not inviolable. I'm not putting him in unviable. I'm just saying he's an Act 5 companion. Next up, we have Chorda, who joins us on an Iconoclast or a Dogmatic run. She has an exceptionally powerful ability where she scales all fellowship from willpower. Yeah, her base build is hot trash because she does not increase any perception, but she is an exceptionally powerful priest. Yeah, Chorda would actually be in the breaks the game category, because if you give her a Master Tactician build that main guns the Hymn of Vehemence, she could easily do 67 single shots from a firearm mastery and just obliterate the entire map, especially if you give her Blessed Bolt Casing, and then she can build up ridiculous stacks of tactical advantage. Yeah, she's just right behind Argenta in terms of sheer power, and she is exceptionally good with melters, and her area attacks get loads of bonus scaling. If she came along earlier, she would happily sit here, though she does have terrible perception and you need to buff it up, but she doesn't. She is an Act 5 companion, so she can stay down here. Next up, we have Cabella. Cabella is a blade dancer, can be built as both an executioner and assassin, and is insanely OP when she works. Cabella is meant to be sat right here because as an assassin, she breaks the game. As an executioner, she breaks the game. However, there is one problem. She's bugged and doesn't work. Yeah, she's bugged and she doesn't work. Basically, Imminent Demise and Assassin doesn't work, and Blade Dancer abilities are bugged and don't count as melee, meaning Scourging Strikes does not count for Death from Above. It doesn't count with Blade Dance. If you use Death Whisper, it will nerf all of her attacks for that entire round, especially if you combine that with Rock Swords, even on Death from Above. And yeah, it causes all sorts of issues. Honestly, I'm going to put her here. Now, with buffs, she can still one turn every encounter and deserves to be here. This is where buffed with bugs version sits. Here's where version without bugs sits. But out of spite, she's going here because Owlcat still hasn't fixed her and she doesn't deserve to be higher until they do. So that's just something to keep in mind. She can still one turn every encounter in the game when built right. I even one turned the crypt encounter at level 24 despite the bugs as an executioner, just because buffs and death from above is that overpowered, and so is death waltz. But I'm still putting her here and I'm renaming it Bugged Owlcat Please Fix. Next up, we have Solomon. Solomon can actually be built to be exceptionally powerful. I would actually say you can build him to be stronger than Jay, Ulfar, and Urvillet, but I wouldn't say stronger than Abelard, because Abelard is still a melee character who has access to Malpian Shroud as well as Invigorating Resolve. Solomon, when you build him for Rate of Fire, is exceptionally powerful. Now, if they hadn't nerfed Eogun, he would actually be up here because of what Eogun's buffs adds on Solomon. But no, Solomon is really good. If you focus on his aerial weapons, you'll find out that you'll have mobility issues and pretty low game damage. Even his top stacking at 5k for area attacks is actually really low compared to what else he can do. But in Act 4, if you just give him the Necron-Tech Hotshot Lasgun and all of the rapid fire talents, yeah, he can do 20k bursts without buffers. So yeah, he is exceptionally powerful. Doesn't clear the map as well as Abelard, but he is still really good. Lastly, Eogun. Eogun, where before they nerfed him, would have comfortably sat here. But unfortunately, Eogun requires extensive ally support to work, so we're actually going to drop him down to here. So Eogun got nerfed, so his electric strikes aren't insanely overpowered. His best option is to be a overseer, where he fully buffs the party and he gives electric strikes as well as his unique armor, as well as his extra MP. However, his galvanic wall to increase allies' damage is really weak. His electric strikes has been nerfed to be really weak. His actually strongest ability is his reactive shield talent, which is when enemies attack, they receive his intelligence bonus damage. Electric strikes used to do that when you attacked enemies, but his defensive version still works like that, and Owlcat haven't realized. However, because they've nerfed him, I can't say he breaks the game. He's just incredibly strong. And as an officer, he is basically just Cassia but a tier lower. But with Cassia and Eogun is your strongest buff team combination possible. And if you have them buffing like Abelard or Argenta or Morazai or even Heinrix, you'll never see any issues with the game. But this is where we currently stand on, I would say, the meta scalings for it. Like I said, once we get this fixed, she'll probably be up here. But because of the Blade Dancer bows, currently she is in Bugged Owlcat Please Fix. And like I said, Chorda would also be up here if it wasn't for the fact that she was Act 5 only, and you'd probably see maybe Winterscale sat around just before Abelard, and you'd probably see Urlon's stat just under Jay, because of Jay's like arc rifle stuff, she is exceptionally overpowered. Urlon's biggest issue at the moment is the fact that he doesn't have access to the pair holster, and I just like his origin better than I like Winterscale. Technically Winterscale is stronger than Urlon, but I'm putting Urlon first just because I like his ability more, it's more fun. And Idira, realistically, she is an AoE buffer and a fairly good damage dealer, so she should be here. But because of her unique suck as a Psyker, the fact that she always has a chance to explode and die no matter what, she can go right down there. But that's where it is. Let me know in the comments below what you would change, why you would justify it, and if you have any arguments going in there, please keep it civil. We're all just nerds loving this game, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye for now.